All right, there we go. Yeah, it's recording now. Okay, cool. Um, so hey everyone, welcome to Ampled's Open Forum. We do this every month, and um, 4 weeks ago we had a really good conversation about some of these upcoming decisions that we've kind of honed in on, and we'll be talking about today. So some of those have been around membership dues for artists moving into 2021, the turn of the new year, and board elections. So I just want to briefly cover what we will talk about today. This will be recorded, so anyone else who's not available to be here for this meeting can check it out. I'll go over a little bit of what we're talking about in the process that we've kind of landed on for what is like our first election, which is exciting, and a chance to meet people that are candidates for the board of directors. And then if we can keep to time, hopefully we can open it up and have some discussion and Q&A. So I would encourage use of the chat for this. If we could, I feel like that's probably the most productive way to have kind of like either like a back and forth, or if you have questions to raise, which could be for Ampled, but also would encourage like specific questions for any of the candidates as well. So I'll go over how we're conducting these elections, a bit of the choices that we've made available for us to decide on, a bit of background on the board, and how we'll go on with voting. So today is January 13th. We will have candidates for the board introduce themselves. After this meeting, and we're able to put this video online, we'll send this out with anyone that's in good standing to vote. And then Monday is the 18th, and that should be enough time for us to gather votes so we can announce some of the results. So here are some of the things that we will be voting on this membership dues. We've decided to vote on as a collective based on polling that we sent out and discussed last open forum, which are kind of a gauge of the sentiment of all members and where people stand. What we asked in some of the questions were, what is the floor, the lowest percentage of artist support that should be contributed back in terms of membership dues? And there's, I feel like we could spend a whole meeting talking about this, but Anna did a really good job of synthesizing the data from those surveys, which you could read about on the blog. There's a really thoughtful blog post about this that illustrates why we came up with these three choices. So one of the things that came up in the previous conversation was a strong desire to have a sliding scale, or what we call pay what's fair model. So whatever an artist is comfortable with, we decided on three options that an artist can choose to pay back in membership dues. So based on several criteria, which you could read more about in the blog and the data that helped us arrive at this, the choices will be these three series or sets of 7%, 10%, 13%, 8%, 10%, 12%, and then 9%, 11%, or 13%. So those are kind of consistent with both the ceiling and the floor that people are comfortable with. And so that will be part of ballots for everyone to have a say in. We'll be electing our first board of directors today. So 3 seats, kind of each a stakeholder class of Ample. So 3 seats representing artist owners, 3 seats representing worker owners, and 3 seats representing community members. So the board is basically sits on top of Ample's leadership. It's kind of what's in charge of everything. So it's the board is meant to steer Ample's strategy, select leadership to make day-to-day decisions, and then some of it's to be determined as we continue to iterate. So part of this will be relying on the board to help audit and approve some of our lines of decision making to make sure that we can operate in a way that's truly democratic. So we'll hear from board candidates. For workers and artists, there's 3 available seats and 3 people running for each of those. So those are not contested in this election. But for workers, I have Ryan Deshawn, Emma Epstein, and Anna Ulin. And then for artists, Renee Klajic, Julia Mark, and Barry Stevenson. And then for community membership, we have several more that we will hear from, and I'm really excited about this this group of people. So who can vote and who's in standing to vote are basically anyone that's currently an artist owner, worker owner, or community member. So artist owners are artists that have 10 supporters or more. Worker owners are people that are working on the platform for 80 hours or 6 months, whichever comes first. And then community members have joined through our community page and support Ample directly for $3 a month or more. So although people can be members of multiple of these stakeholder classes, for instance, Renee is both a worker owner and an artist owner. You can only vote in one particular election. So like voting for an artist representative or voting as a worker or a community member. And the other thing that's important is consistent with being a cooperative, it's one member, one vote. So no one has any outsized voting power over anyone else here. And then the last thing is just things to keep in mind. This is the first kind of like co-op election that we've had. We're kind of building a small government. Everything is iterative, so nothing's set in stone. Everything is made so that it can be amended and changed. And I just want to say thanks for participating in this. So yeah, thanks again. So we'll try to, I guess that was good on time. We'll try to, if we can, keep each introduction to around 2.5 minutes or so. And yeah, maybe we'll start with workers. We could do that in alphabetic order, maybe Ryan, Emma, and then Anna. Yeah, so Ryan, would you like to go?
Sure. Yeah. So I've so music and the culture that stems from it is very drives who I am day to day, and which is a big reason why I am here and was asked to be a part of Ample in the beginning. I've always known that like going to shows and buying shirts and buying merch or doing something directly to the artist was always the best way to support an artist directly. I mean, I know listening to it on Apple Music or any of that, I always knew that wasn't going into their pocket. So, there needed to be something that filled that gap, and Ample is trying to do that. I think Austin approached me in the early days of Ampled because he knew I shared this sort of vision of what music support system could be and look like. That said, like I've been helping try to steer Ampled pretty early on, right after Colin and Austin, to get to where we're at today. And from a technical side as well as an ideological side. I've always tried to from a technical side, like try to bring in other people who are smarter than me or have different perspectives than me, different experiences than me. I try to do that in my day job and regular life in general, just because there's a lesson that I've been taught a long time ago was like any conversation I'm in, I always try to learn something from that other person. And, that goes without saying as well with Ample from the technical side, from, how Ample is built. So yeah, I've serving as a board member kind of helps me continue to sort of advocate for musicians and fans alike, and allows me to use, my knowledge and technical skills in terms of building an application and help steering it that way. So yeah, I don't really know how to end that, but yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Very cool.
Thanks, Bob.
Emma?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Awesome, thanks. So probably the best way to explain why I decided to get involved with Ampled is to go back to when I was 14 years old and my violin teacher sat me down and asked if I wanted to start prepping for conservatory because I would need to practice a lot more than I was. And she described what like the traditional path of a classical musician looked like, at least from her perspective. It was a lot of auditions, it was a lot of gig work, and just like a real lack of control over the direction of your career. And that was really disheartening to me. So I decided instead to go to liberal arts school for undergrad and found that at the end of the day, music and musicians still was what was most important to me. So that rather than being a musician, I would see if I could change that dynamic and make those choices easier for current musicians and perhaps musicians of the future. So for a while, I worked at various arts nonprofits in New York City, doing a little bit of everything because usually they were really small. Got pretty disillusioned with that model and decided to go back to school and get an MBA because I really wanted to learn just like more about organizations and best practices. I also joined a rock band at B School, which is one of the best things I've ever done as a classical musician. And then I found myself in May of 2020 working at Lincoln Center and just wondering what in the world musicians were going to do with COVID and just like the world in general. So I heard about Ampled from a friend who connected me to Austin and I joined the team. And I think my official title is something like product manager of membership, but I like to think I've just helped with strategy in general. Whether that's moderating these open forums, you may remember me from that. Asking questions of artists to figure out like what we should build or why, and just like having good conversations with every member of the team to bring kind of the big picture business school background that I have to help understand like what our decisions might mean in the future and where we're going. So I feel like those skills would be really useful in a board context. And it's also just been so much fun to work with this group of workers in general, especially worker owners. You all are absolutely brilliant. So have like zero pretense and are some of the most innovative people I've ever met. So I just hope that I can be helpful in this context, and it would be a real honor to be on the board.
Great.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Anna?
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm a software engineer. I have worked my whole career in tech, so that's about 20 years now. I won't tell you any stories of my musical background because I don't have any. But my background is in software, as I said. And the big reason why I got involved with Ampled was because I am a strong believer that we need better ways to build software, to build platforms that actually serves its users instead of serving the VCs and the investors and the CEOs. And that's why I reached out to Austin at the beginning of last year, I guess, just before COVID hit, to be involved with Ampled. I have some experience in the space because I used to work at Patreon. And as I said, I've worked at other Silicon Valley companies. And so I have some firsthand experience of how those sausages get made and how I would prefer them not to be made. And that's why I'm here. I mostly write software, and that's my background. I've also been a head of engineering and a people manager and a CTO and all those things. So, you know, I have some idea of how to help organizations, you know, not entirely fall apart and move forward and be hopefully less shitty to their people. So, you know, that's my angle. And I hope to help the board at least stay focused on those aspects of Ampled and how we build it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Cool. We can go to artists, owners now. Maybe we'll do this in alphabetical order too. Or go with Renee, Julia, and then Barry.
Hey everyone, I'm Renee. I perform music as Ziemba. I think I was one of the first Ampled artist pages on there. And I've been enthusiastic about Ampled in a number of different ways since I first heard about it. And I first met Austin last March, right before the world changed. But before I had ever heard about Ampled, I was already, beyond being a working musician, I was already very interested in advocating for a better music industry, a music industry that's more equitable, treats artists more fairly, less filled with bullshit in a number of forms. And I've done a lot of things in terms of advocacy for a better music industry. I made a list a couple of years ago of music industry organizations that had women and non-binary people in leadership, because that's something I saw as very lacking. I mean, it is lacking. And I also work as a journalist, and I've done a fair bit of writing about the state of the music industry. I would be very excited. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Austin. I would be very excited and honored to be on the board at Ampled. You know, as an artist on here, I really appreciate what it is now, but I'm also really excited about what it can be in the future as it grows. And I look forward to being part of that growth and helping to, I mean, I'm proud that there are a number of artists on Ampled who I showed Ampled to. And so I take some pride in like being an ambassador for it. And I think as one of the artist board members, I would be able to do that even more, in addition to, you know, being part of that decision making. So yeah, that's my spiel.
Awesome. Very cool. Julia, do you want to go?
Sure. Hello, I'm Julia. I am pretty new on the scenes at Ampled, I think, compared to a lot of the other folks who have spoken. I joined the platform as an artist in the fall. I heard about it through a Philadelphia singer-songwriter, Eliza Edens, that I had met at a house show here in Boston. And I think what drew me to it was that it felt very much like a community space, and it was very transparent. And I felt like it was on the side of the artist, whereas I feel like other platforms can feel a little more predatory or like they're trying to make money. And I felt like it felt empowering as an artist. And also to see how they brought in members of the community. And I think that the whole kind of community perspective really resonated with me personally as an artist, because I, for many years, had a lot of stage fright. I majored in music in college, but I did not really perform until after college. And one of the things something that got me out of my shell was the music community, and feeling like this isn't just about me, and it's not just like, hey, I'm in the spotlight, check out my story, because I didn't feel like what I had to say was like particularly special or important compared to other people's stories. Like everybody's story is important. But kind of feeling like, oh, music can be this collective experience where like you're opening up about something and therefore giving other people space to open up and share. And I feel that sense of community and openness here at Ampled. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops over time.
Very cool. Thank you. Barry?
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Barry Stevenson. I'm a bassist, composer, producer, band leader based in New York City. And a little bit about me is I started out playing music actually wanting to be in a heavy metal and a punk rock band when I was in 8th grade. So I always had this sense of DIY ethos behind what I was doing. And when I found out about Ampled through Gabriel Barreto, I was actually signed up for Patreon, and I just was turned off by like the coldness and the sterile kind of vibes of it. And he told me about this platform, and I checked it out, and it just completely aligned with what I wanted to do as an artist. And I felt it was also something that could help other artists, because we're, people primarily know me for playing jazz. And one thing about, after gigs and in jazz clubs, people are always complaining about the industry, how it's screwing over artists, what we can do better. And this felt like an opportunity to stop talking about it and be about it. So a part of my reasoning for running for the Ampled board is I wanted to actually be a part of this being successful and play it, because I believe in it, and I figure if I can play a hand in its success, then that'll make me feel like I've actually, been able to accomplish something outside of just playing music for the community, but actually bringing like equity to the scene of no matter the genre, but also just kind of being a voice for, I know, my little small corner of the music field. But I'm really, really excited. Looking forward to working with the other board members and just this community that we're building here. I think it can be overlooked, but I've met some people who I otherwise might have not, been in contact with just through these forum meetings, and started to build relationships, supporting their music, they're supporting mine. So I just think I want to be able to have a voice to foster more of a community sense on this platform, and also represent the artists and our needs, so we can, let the workers and the community members know what we need in order to make a better experience for them.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Oh, I was muted. Sorry. Thanks, Barry. I just put a list in the chat of the community member candidates. So we can go in this order, I think, assuming everyone's here. And so, yeah, if you'd introduce yourself and a bit about your title or background. So would you like to go first, Mari?
Sure, I can do that. Hi, everybody. My name's Mari. I use she, her pronouns. I'm coming at you from Oakland, California, also known as occupied Ohlone land. I found out about Ampled through Lizzie No, who's a good friend from college. Started supporting her page and then just got really excited about the format. And, I have read a lot of things about Spotify and the industry. I'm not super music industry involved myself, but in terms of my connection to music, I was like in a million children's choirs growing up. Music was a huge part of my childhood, and it's just been, even as an adult, like going to concerts, listening to music all the time. It's definitely a really important thing to me. And so in my life, what I do, spend my time, I'm an artist, mostly visual. Some of it is singing. I'm an organizer, mostly in anti-racist spaces. And then I've spent most of the part of the last 10 years working in nonprofits in fundraising and communications, kind of with a focus on grassroots, social justice-based storytelling, to try to kind of build community and raise money that way. So raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for social justice causes, political candidates that are like democratic socialists, and most recently for the last few years, I've been working in the homelessness space in San Francisco. So I would be super excited to be on Ampled's board. I think what is most compelling to me is having been at nonprofits for 8 or 9 years at this point, like feeling a little bit disillusioned with that approach to world building and changing our society. I think it's important. It's an important strategy, but I think there's something really exciting about working at this intersection of creativity, music, artists, and also building the world we want to live in, building alternative models that empower people and can help people kind of build the lives they want, thrive. So I'd be super excited to just be collaborating on this, learning, growing with the community at Ampled. So that's what's up with me. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome, thank you. Nicole?
Hey. I'm Nicole Davis. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. And I learned about Ampled in some tweet at some point in like early 2020 and was intrigued, and it sort of like checked all of the various boxes. It was one of those like intersections I sort of realized, and I've realized a lot this year, that like community governance is a huge part of sort of how I've lived my life, and both through like professions as community organizers, but also I went to a school that was community governed. My kids go to a school that's community governed. It seems like something that I've sort of made a path of unwittingly. And so as I started learning about Ampled more and more, I was like, oh, wow, this is this sort of like cross section of all of these different interests. Up until very recently, I ran the Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship at Berklee College of Music. I was head of the Open Music Initiative, which is like an industry consortium with all of the sort of major and smaller and startups and individual artists, companies that are part of the music supply chain. And I was part of a founding team at Berklee that started a student-led, student-designed music licensing platform. And that was the thing that I think similarly was like really exciting for me, was a place where students could price and value their music and sort of have this like direct to consumer path to career sovereignty. And so, you know, there's so many pieces of Ampled's work that excite me. And again, it's kind of this like interesting intersection between community governance, building something with people, with the constituents, figuring out it, you know, as you go. And I didn't really like know I was going to be working in the music industry until I came to Berklee. Previously, I'd done a lot of like youth development work, community organizing, education, but I fell in love with this industry. I mean, I love music. I like playing guitar by myself with no one looking or listening. But I've become increasingly just really passionate about this industry, where it's like one of the most valuable types of expression, and yet one of the sort of most convoluted ways of compensating those creatives. So yeah, being able to, you know, be part of a team that's doing it right, and I think can really sort of show versus tell how it's done, would be really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Jonathan?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jonathan Ellis, and I recently left my job. I was the director of product for shoppers at Instacart, and I helped lead the team that helped millions of people earn money independently online for the first time. But I think independent online work is still really in its infancy. And while I was inspired by Instacart shoppers, I also have some real firsthand experience with the challenges that traditional corporate structures face in building these types of platforms. And I think that Ampled is at the forefront of future governance structures, transparency, artist support, that will really allow the creator and independent economy to flourish. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas, the live music capital, where I grew up going to outdoor concerts and back patio jam sessions for local musicians. And I think, you know, musicians were some of the original independent creators, so it makes sense that Ampled is at the forefront of this movement. I'm now focused on investing in and advising independent creators and companies building platforms to support them. Personally, I'm building a community of cabins for independent creators outside of Austin, Texas right now, investing in independent creators via something called the Creator Fellowship, and helping run a creator cooperative. So I'm honored to be a member of this community, and you know, if elected as a member of the board, I would be able to bring some of my hard-learned experience to the table to help make sure that Ample continues to thrive in its mission.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Sam?
Yeah, hi everyone. Like so many have already said, I'm just so excited to be here and be a part of this community. It's combines two things that I'm just probably my two greatest passions, which are music and kind of the social solidarity economy movement. I don't have a background playing music, but when I was in undergrad, I wrote for a music blog and played around with production some. I am currently in my last year at Harvard Law School, where I am on the board of our recording artist project, where we provide pro bono legal services for artists in the greater Boston community. A lot of them are Berklee College of Music students, but also some members outside the community. And it was at law school where I was first exposed to kind of the cooperative movement, the solidarity economy movement. I was in our community enterprise clinic where I was working with cooperatives, helping them draft their bylaws, determine the appropriate corporate structure. I did similar work last summer in Oakland. I was at the Sustainable Economies Law Center in Oakland, working with immigrant cooperatives, helping draft their founding documents. And this is just something that I am so excited about. After law school, I'm going to be moving to New York, where I'll be working in a nonprofit, helping low income, under-resourced entrepreneurs raise money outside of the traditional capital structure. And so similarly to how Ampled raised money through their revenue sharing notes, I'm going to be doing that and helping entrepreneurs do that on a fellowship and kind of building an infrastructure to make raising capital easier for non-traditional businesses, entrepreneurs who are traditionally cut out of our capital systems. And being on the board would just be such an honor, I think, based on what I've learned at law school, what I'm going to be doing in my fellowship project, that like knowing how to raise capital, having some of the experience from law school, having drafted bylaws before, having thought about corporate governance, both in a practical sense and also in a classroom sense, that I would have a lot to offer. I know that, no matter what, that Ampled is going to be successful. There's this community of just incredibly passionate, like-minded individuals that I am so fortunate to be a part of. And I just think being on the board would be an incredible honor. And yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thanks, Sam. Jessica Mason.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Mason. I'm based in Massachusetts, where I live with my partner and 3 kids. I grew up in Australia, and I've lived and worked on every continent except Antarctica. But I guess I still have time to tick that one off. So here's hoping. I have what I call a hummingbird career. So I have lots of different positions, and I kind of flit about cross-pollinating between them and kind of making chemistry and alchemy between them. So I hold a bunch of them. Most relevant here, probably that I am, as of January 1st, Executive Director of Cooperatives for a Better World, which is a nonprofit. I'm also co-director of Startup Co-op, which is the accelerator that Ampled graduated from last year, and where I spend most of my time coaching cooperative entrepreneurs. I also teach. I consult with nonprofits and foundations all across the Western Hemisphere. I also angel invest in startups, particularly startups that are working to eradicate poverty, inequity, and injustice. Most of my work is really focused on how we can innovate programs, policy, business models, financing models, you name it, basically, with the goal of wanting to create a more equitable economy and society at large. So I'd be thrilled to serve on the Ampled board as a community representative. I love to ask hard questions. I love to work collaboratively with my peers to find sort of hidden and unearth those hidden solutions. And also really just generally want to contribute to the healthy and equitable growth of cooperative businesses. I love what Ampled's building. Not just because of what it represents for the music industry and for musicians, although I think that's incredibly important, but also what it represents for the cooperative economy at large and the potential it has to change our economy and our society and the way we understand the value of the work that people put in their jobs and in their lives. My virtual door is always open, so I would love to help community members participate in the governance of Ampled by being a board member. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Is Gary Martin here? No, maybe not. Okay, we'll check in with Gary Martin.
I was trying to keep my eye on the admissions, and I hope I didn't miss him, but I was trying to pay attention as much as I could.
Well, we'll follow up and give him an opportunity if something has come up. Then we can move on to Haley.
Hello, everybody. I am Haley Rosenblum, and I am so excited to be running on the board of directors of Ampled. So a little bit about me: lifelong music fan, enthusiast. It's my world, right? So like all of you, if you're music fans, you know the power of a song, a power of a band. And I have devoted my entire life and career to helping enable artists connect with their fans in the most authentic way possible and build a sustainable independent career. So it started out with being a teenager on message boards, leading up to my day job, which is for the last 11 years, I have worked behind the scenes as a core team member for the independent artist musician, Amanda Palmer, who you may recognize from all the weird and wacky and wonderful things that she has used the internet to do, not at which at least I have been involved in. So such things as world record breaking Kickstarters, yay, Patreon records and the like. And so my background has been liaison to the fans, being the person helping connect the dots and make sure that an artist's voice is authentic and the fans are heard and their needs are met. And in doing that, I've liaised on with those big networks and platforms that we're using. For some time, for about 3.5 years, I also worked at Kickstarter as their music campaign strategist and outreach lead, which meant that I spoke to hundreds, maybe even thousands if you count all the emails I've sent, of artists and musicians, and I know their pain points with using online platforms. I know their fears, their anxieties, their joys, their excitements, all of that. And I've helped direct and steer them to connect authentically with their fans and to use technology, and taught them all sorts of things. And as such, for the last several years, I've also been a consultant to artists, helping them navigate these platforms, helping them figure out how to use the internet to authentically share their voice and earn money to do it. So we can, to quote the famous movie, Empire Records, damn the man, save the empire. How can you make money without having to do the traditional sellout things or the traditional venues, right? These are questions artists are thinking about now more than ever. And you don't want to just sell yourself to earn a buck. You want to do it in a way that makes you as an artist feel great. And that's something that I'm constantly working with artists for, working with them to do. I think one of the greatest strong suits that I have is because I'm so passionate as a music fan myself. I really cringe when I see artists do something that feels wrong or feels inauthentic to their own voice. And I use that perspective to really advocate for artists and their fans alike. I've spoken on many industry many industry panels and conferences. And one of the things that always makes me cringe, especially in the how to monetize fan talks, are how do you treat fans as consumers and customers? And it's true, fans do spend money, but they're a community. And so it is my privilege to be running as a community member for the board of directors, because in everything that I do to help artists connect with the audience, it's from the perspective of a community member. As someone who has seen what goes behind the scenes at those big crowdfunding platforms and has painstakingly advocated for artists and watched successful, them listen to what I'm saying from a voice of a choir of artists, to watching them ignore it and seeing that mistakes happen in real time, it would be my absolute honor to represent the community of Ampled to Ampled and to help enrich the artists, the workers, and the community members to make the best platform we can make, and do so to keep the mission that Ampled has shining bright. Because one thing that happens often, as many of you know, with technology, the mission sounds great. Ooh, but then there's this and there's money and there's obligations pulling people in other directions, and that's bound to happen. But how do we keep that spotlight on the mission? That's something I hope to find out as part of the board of directors at Ampled.
Oh, I was
Unmute,
muted.
Austin.
Oh, thank you, Haley. Jesse?
All right, thanks everybody. My name is Jesse Seegers. I prefer they, them pronouns. And I have a little bit of background in music, but really I work, my training background is in architecture. And kind of primarily now I make my living as an educator and designer in 2D and 3D worlds. I found out about Ampled in December, actually, when I wrote a Twitter thread about how the new school is using kind of labor suppression tactics where I teach. And I'll drop that link in the chat if you're curious. Sorry, it's really long. And in that thread, I was kind of proposing alternative university, cooperatively organized university structures for teaching, and mentioned Nathan Schneider, who I had known about from going to platform cooperative conferences that were hosted at the new school in 2015, 16, 17. And Nathan mentioned Ampled, so I was really intrigued. But a little bit, maybe a more kind of background. I used to play guitar. I similarly started in 8th grade, really into like punk and ska music. I composed electronic music, took music theory. When I went to high school, I had an ARC 2600 synthesizer, which I spent a lot of time playing around with. And I worked in recording studios doing like spoken word, film, and TV, which was like in high school, pre-iPod, pre-podcast, which is why it's hard for me to listen to podcasts now. But then when I was in NYU studying, I was in classes with music business majors and realized that they kind of took all the fun out of all the reasons that I liked being involved in music. I also have terrible rhythm. And so I realized like maybe design and visual things are better for me. So in my background as an architect and designer, I've collaborated with a lot of musicians. For the past 7 years, I've had practice designing, fabricating, and producing temporary pneumatic or inflatable structures for sort of performative or performance props with musicians like One of Tricks Point Never, Sophie, Miho Hattori, LA-based musician Banoffee, and some others who unfortunately make me sign like ridiculous NDAs, but who also fancy themselves as fashion designers. So I'm kind of familiar with like what happens behind the scenes, and you know what like a perspective of working with an artist and all the collaborators and everything else that happens in that world to realize a vision, and you know how the money works, right, and how the credit works, and all those things, and making everybody kind of feel part of a community and trust each other, or not, as that might happen, right? So I'm also kind of very comfortable like taking a back seat and not really needing the credit. Very happy with that. So I've worked on buildings as an architect, but really that's not kind of what making, constructing things is. It's really about the connections between things. Often that's between a floor and a wall and a ceiling and a window, because we need shelter. But really what I work is, or kind of what I work in now, is like connections between technologies, communities, and ideas. And it's kind of what I teach, both in a graphic design, visual foundation studio at NYU, and design and publishing courses at New School in Parsons. So I also, in that capacity, am a union of the UAW Local 7902 union, both at NYU and at Parsons, which is why I'm kind of involved in labor activism and involved in a number of committees through that. Yeah, so I sort of am really involved, or really interested and involved in platform co-ops, having gone to these conferences and kind of reading both literature and theory, and then kind of talking to people, including right now, about trying to take the New School into a cooperative, which, as you can imagine, might be an uphill battle, but also maybe just starting a new cooperatively run university. I'm also in the early stages of starting a cooperative publishing platform called Seas. Maybe I'll just drop that link in the chat too if you're, UW Region 9A. And so I'm really interested in how these kind of organizations start off to create mutual co-creation of value for everybody involved, creators, workers, and what we normally would formally call the audience, but now, right, as a community of engaged supporters that also has a vested interest in seeing the people that they support succeed. So I'm running for this seat because I think, I don't know, maybe my background has a kind of complementary perspective, and I also have this kind of, I also do a lot of writing for architecture and design magazines. So in this kind of weird outsiderness of different backgrounds, might have some things to contribute to Ampled. I'm really impressed with everyone else's bios and backgrounds and everything. So it's kind of just an honor and really exciting to be here with everyone and learn more about everyone. So yeah, whatever the outcome is, I'm kind of really hoping to support it in ways that I can contribute. And yeah, hope to do that. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. We have two Davids, David Shmoody, and then we'll go to David Turner last. And I just want to remind, if anyone has any questions for anyone, you could drop it in the chat. Colin's going to help moderate questions or a discussion that will open up after that. So David?
Yeah, David Shmoody. To differentiate me, a lot of people just call me Shmoody. So the guy with the funny last name. And I've known about Ampled since around the time that Ryan started. I was introduced to the project, and I'm really excited to see the incredible talent that's been attracted to the platform today, besides just, of course, what you see online. Yeah, so I was an artist full-time for 15 years, and I worked in technology, time-based media, which also included music. And that also meant that I was able to kind of keep an eye on tech as I went along. And so I've been interested in technology since the old BBS days, and communities online since the BBS days, where you used to dial in, and organizing communities online. And so I was, of course, disenchanted to see how our community spaces online have been co-opted by corporations, and then somehow we've been turned around to believe that they are owned by us. Well, of course, Ampled offers a really exciting alternative to that, where it really is owned by us, right? So my job these days is actually working on identity online. I'm the CTO of a company called Yorba, and I'm personally based out of Italy, although we employ people in Denmark, in Costa Rica, and in Nepal, and in New York. And so although this idea of global community, I think, has some maybe fundamental pitfalls, there are some exciting possibilities here that after 20, 25 years of the public internet, we are just beginning to scratch the surface of. And of course, Ampled is one of those spaces. So it'd be my my privilege to lend a little bit of a historic lens to organizing in digital spaces if I'm involved on the community board. I have taught science and technology studies, which sort of tries to contextualize the sort of decisions that are made with technology and the effects on community. And as a working artist, I'm very sensitive to the practical realities that artists face, especially when you're asked to do so much more today. In particular, for example, asking artists to also be community managers, I think, is a lot to ask of artists. And so these are the sorts of issues that we as a collective can see how we can be creative about not just building an incredible business model that it can sustain itself going forward, but also stay true to our core and our mission, which is to actually help artists do what they were put on earth to do, which is make art, and make music. And that's the most exciting part of the possibility here, is to actually further that cause. So thanks for your time, and I can't wait to hear from I guess, Dave Turner.
Cool. Thanks, Rooney. David, you want to go? David Turner?
Yeah, no. Okay. I also want to second that all the folks that have spoken so far are absolutely great. A lot of good candidates tonight. So just to intro myself, I'm David Turner. I currently work at SoundCloud as a program manager, and I also write a newsletter called Penny Fractions, which is a sort of, I guess at this point, like bi-monthly sort of assessment of the record industry and the broader music industry as of like the last year or so. So what I kind of want to, I have a slightly different pitch than some of the other folks that have spoken. I don't have any experience working in co-ops or anything like that. I do have experience doing doing union organizing, and I was at a union at my last job. And I do have some experience in just other sort of other organizing, as I'm also a member of the New York City DSA. But I guess I want to sort of start at the top level, just to sort of say that the record industry over the last few years has sort of seen sort of a bump up because of streaming. And also there's sort of a sense that oh, hey, the record industry was doing really poorly throughout the 2000s and early 2010s, and it's now sort of coming back, and there's sort of a mystery of how high it can go. And I guess I want to spoil that to say it's going to keep going higher. There's no real reason to me, as I'm looking at the record industry in 2021, to think that its profits are going to be going down. Streaming is continuing to grow, even though it is slowing, but the record industry, because of the high financialized sort of web that it's created of having 3 record labels, with one of those major labels, Universal Music Group, owned 20% by Tencent, one of China's biggest media companies, means that they basically can just whenever a new platform emerges, be it a TikTok, Facebook with Instagram, Facebook and Instagram, they can basically start setting out deals with all these new tech firms. And once they do that, they can just sort of keep making money. And so what I imagine over the next 10 years is that the record industry will continue to make money through streaming, because Apple, Google, and Amazon don't really care that much about streaming. They'll just sort of let that continue to go. And as they let that continue to go, everything else will sort of keep going upward. And the reason I'm sort of giving this 1,000 foot view is just to sort of say that for Ampled, what I see right now happening is that there's a lot of opportunity, because there are a lot of folks that sort of realize this intuitively, that the record industry does not care about artists, which we've all known for years, but it's now that we see that it doesn't care about artists, but its profits are continuing to go up. So there have been a lot of musicians and sort of groups that have been organizing. There's also the co-op Resonate. And what I sort of see right now is that there is a really increased sort of desire for things like Ample. And as I sort of see this, see more of this desire out there, I really, really hope that Ample can be part of these emerging communities that are coming about, of the Resonates, of the Union of Music and Allied Workers, the Music Workers Alliance, even with other sort of unions and firms that do exist. I am, I guess, sort of in a way speaking from a more United States perspective, I'll say. But the reason I wanted to sort of connect all those is that part of me, whenever I sort of think of co-ops and sort of what is sort of the ideal, is creating its own sort of new ecosystem in a way for all these things to sort of sustain themselves. And to me, that can only really happen if we can all sort of start working together, start thinking through a lot of these questions and putting more heads together when it comes to a lot of these issues. So that's sort of my hope, is that as Ample sort of continues to grow, it can sort of address not all of the concerns of the record industry, but at least be part of those conversations and part of of other folks and other groups coming to work together to fix these things. So that's my little spiel. Thank you.
Oh man, everyone's so awesome.
What a great talent.
Yeah, I'm blown away by how incredibly thoughtful everyone has been, the level of participation. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone.
100%.
And I would also just say that even though there's a limited number of community board seats, that participation doesn't have to start and end there. That it's kind of like an open invite, and there's plenty of ways to get involved and help further our mission and cause in a way that is congruent with the unique perspective that everyone here brings. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. We could open it up now. And the other thing that I would say is this is kind of the last step for us to be out of beta. We've had the beta tag on the website for a while, and it feels like the governance and the actual organizational structure is part of the product. And I think having this group in place feels like we're kind of at the beginning of launching now. So I'm really happy that everyone came. So yeah, thank you again. We should.
Thanks so much. If anyone's got questions, just let me know. I mean, you can obviously direct them at someone specifically, or if you have a question kind of for everyone, I'll help to elevate that. If you don't feel like chiming in physically, I can facilitate that. Go ahead. I'm pointing, but it doesn't really probably feel the right direction.
Hey, you.
Yeah,
you.
You. Yeah.
Am I up there? Down there? I have a question for the community members. I'm a community member myself. My music history is sort of like a past chapter, and I saw the Ample platform. Totally entranced with it. I think it's like a lot of you have said, it's like the next step for organizing and supporting musicians and what they want to be doing. But I want to go off of what Austin had just mentioned about Ample coming out of beta. And I think that's a pivotal moment for any kind of platform, whether it's online or otherwise, when it finally meets the public. What do you all, I want to hear from any candidates for the community positions here, because that's who I'm going to be voting for. What do you think is what should be a priority, if not the top priority, when you start acting on behalf of the community and Ample, and how it's going to sort of make itself known and make itself distinctive out there on the internet? I would love to hear this. I would love to hear your opinions on that. Thank you.
Well, this could be awkward, so I'll jump in and kick us off maybe. I spent a lot of time thinking about this with Austin and Colin, and one of the things for me when we think about what does it mean for community members past, beyond beta, I think there's a question of what does community membership look like and how does it evolve? Community membership stemmed from a lot of interest from folks like us who said, you're doing something really cool and I just love to be involved somehow. And I'm not a software developer and I'm not an artist, but I just want to be part of what you're building. And I think that will be sustained in large part just because Ample's building something amazing. But it also was a way for Ample to cover some of its early costs. And that was like a really concrete need. And so I think what we're going to see is that both Ample's needs will shift and community members' needs and desires will shift. And so I think one of the things that community board representatives have to be thinking about is they kind of have to have their eye on that and their ears open to listen to say, how can we as a community meet Ample's needs and help uplift and support Ample to allow it to grow in the direction it wants to, but also how can we ensure that Ample is also serving the community members' needs, because it's an equally important stakeholder group. One member, one vote, all these democratic principles. So for me, when you go beyond beta, when you say, okay, we're going to the next phase of growth, that inherently means there's going to be an evolution in what Ample needs of the community, what the community needs of Ample, and bridging that is going to be something we have to think really strategically about.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Haley?
Yeah, so one of the things that's the biggest challenge for artists is for any platform like Ample or whatever, they have to bring their fans onto the platform in order to raise money, fundraise, and begin building a community. So one of the greatest things for artists is more artists bringing their fans onto a platform so that they can learn how it works, get involved and be a joy, and then start pledging or becoming members of other artists' pages. So once Ample becomes open to the public, sure, that means that more artists are on board, but it also means that we have a great opportunity to build the community for each artist and minimize the work of explaining what Ample is, how it works, how to support artists through it. So in doing that, it's important, I think, for the Ample community and for the company to think about how is the company going to scale to support those artists and support those added community members, so that questions like, how does this work? What does this payment question mean? Like all these technical stuff, along with what's the best practice to getting my fans engaged? How many songs should I be releasing a month? The bigger the community gets of artists, the bigger the fan community gets. And so we want to make sure it's a healthy ecosystem of both the number of artists, the number of fans, and how do you scale? So if a larger artist comes to the platform, their needs from Ample may be different from an artist who has a smaller following. And so it just starts to open not a can of worms, because I think it's a great thing, but a can of more questions, kind of like a big spider web of making sure that the community is healthy along with the artist count.
Nicole, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I think, along with that, when a platform grows, there's also the people that are really excited that it exists that don't necessarily or aren't necessarily interested in sort of how the sausage gets made. And I think that that's, hopefully ideally going to be a challenge of Ampled. And, I've seen that in a lot of community projects, that there's the people who kind of want to weigh in at that like most sort of acute pain point, but for the most part, they're just kind of happy to like be in the ecosystem. And so I think that, bringing in artists obviously is going to be a massive part of sort of what that next phase is, like, in this two-sided market, like you need the artists, like Haley said. But I think that how you balance that sort of point between like bringing people in that are really excited to be part of a platform cooperative, and then just also bringing people in that are artists that want to connect with their fans and, are like, okay, cool, like Patreon or Ampled, like, sure, I'll go for Ampled, like this seems cool, but I don't necessarily want to be super involved in the sausage. And I think in any community governed project, that's a thing, and every community has to sort of like reckon with that piece. And, I'm excited for Ampled to get to that point.
Mark? I don't want to repeat what's been said, as I appreciate everybody's thoughts. I think it's a really good question. It was something I was thinking about because I see that Ampled has the goal of growing community membership, and just thinking about the people that are funding Ampled, there's like the pool of people who support Ampled, and then there's there's the artists, and there are people who support the artists. And I currently am in both camps, and it's like thinking about what is it that I want to see from my donation every month to Ampled. Like, what do I want to know? Why am I doing that? So I'm curious, Stephen, like, what was it that made you want to support Ampled, and like, what do you like? I think it'd be interesting to hear from the community, like what they want to be hearing, because I'm always thinking if you want to grow that group, you need to know like what the value add is for them. Like, why would they want to be a part of that group? And so I think I want to kick it back to you, if that's possible, to hear like what you want to know, because you're here and you're involved, and that's awesome.
Anything is possible. I just alluded to my history a little bit. In my younger days, I was a vocalist for a band, played everywhere, played all the spots in our town, was on a national television show, blah blah blah. In my town, I also ran a DIY performance venue where we let any band come up and play at our space, and I was the one staff member who was there 6 days a week, just opening the doors, cleaning the bathrooms, and running the soundboard all in the same night. It was a beautiful, beautiful time. And I saw so many young people come to our stage, do their thing. And was it 5 years later, a beatboxer who played on our stage, and I ran sound for him, like, he was on our stage and he did his thing. And then 5 years later, I saw him perform at the Meyerhoff Concert Hall in front of a symphony orchestra. And he did the exact same little things on that stage that he did in our space. And to see an artist grow and change in that way is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So when I heard about Ampled, like helping out every single artist, even though from those who were just starting out until the lady who played keyboards for La Tigra and Cat Power, who I've seen on national television, who I've seen at huge stadium shows, like to see that spectrum of artists being supported, I think is tremendous. And allowing everybody to have that kind of accessibility to the platform, I think is really important for musicians, whether they're starting out or whether they're trying to nurture community and getting to that next stage. So that's why I'm here. So I divested from some of those other platforms that Ampled has sort of riffed off of to stake its own claim, and I've put my money into Ampled instead. So I took money out of there and put it over here. And I still have a day job right now. So oh yeah, you're kindly welcome. I think you're doing an awesome thing around here. So I did what I did what I could to keep things going on at Ampled. So That's why I'm here. It goes back to my roots of whether it was me being on stage and sneaking my own beer and wine into the venue so I could drink that night, or running the soundboard for somebody I was going to see with a capacity crowd at a symphony hall. I mean, it was amazing. That journey that he must have had was just huge. Like, imagine what his life is like. Now he's a diplomat he's a musical diplomat for Tuva, which is like in the middle of Asia. Like, absolutely incredible journey that this guy's had. And like, I saw him at his beginning, and now I've seen him at the height of where he is now. I mean, it's huge. It is absolutely huge. I hope that answers your question.
Jesse, you wanted to add something as well. I saw your hand was raised.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of put a little bit in the chat because, and I think Stephen, like what you just said, kind of maybe I'm just going to echo it, is like, for me, one of the things that I've learned from teaching is that, like, in order for a community to get bigger, trust and like listening is one of the most important things. Like, teaching remotely this past fall, a kind of magic thing happened. Actually, my background is like one of the things that made the students trust me because I gave it to them. And so we were all in this like virtual space together. So it's like weird, new, normal. And instantly they all turned their cameras on and we started trusting each other and had like the most amazing conversations. And it's like that, just that, like, because money is one form of trust. Like, that's all it is, right? It's just a thing that we can all agree on to say like, yeah, you're good for this, right? You got my back, I got your back. And like, when I started learning as much from my students as I was telling them, like, it kind of just went to another level. And so that's what I think kind of like, as things scale and get bigger and go from like, you know, beta to real, realer, like, that's, I think, one of the most like fundamental things is like, and part of that is governance and things like that, but really it's like that essay that I linked to is an interesting one about like squad wealth and like the group chat, right? Like, everybody has a group chat who you can be unvarnished with, and like there's dynamics in it. So like thinking about all those other forms of trust aside from just money, because that's not what motivates me to do things, but it's the lubricant that makes things happen. So yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Shmoody, you want to say something?
Sure. And I'll quickly add a different angle on it. And I've also been part of a failed organizing attempt at a unionization. And I have been also part of a community that has lost its space, its physical space, you know, so the community fell apart. And of course, I think we're all in some ways connected to this larger online community, which I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that is a failed experiment with Facebook and Twitter, where these aspirations for a global community that were kind of prophesized in the 90s came about. And so there's a lot of ways that this can go wrong. And but there are lessons in history that I think we can pull from, you know, building off of what Jessica talked about positioning Ample in a way that's sustainable to achieve its goals, but also what was also discussed here, where there is a really delicate issue about size. I'm hearing a lot of echoes about this, like how much can Ample grow and still maintain sort of like community management aspirations and build a healthy community, because this has not been proven. But I will say though, one of the things that makes Ample unique is that labor history actually does have a relatively good track record. And so we're different than other communities that scale in the sense that the people that don't care about how the sausage is made, as you know, Nicole was talking about, the people that don't care about these things, you know, this happens in labor movements as well. And so just, you know, the power dynamics shift around a little bit, but the labor movement can continue because they are unified by this one thing. And unlike what's happened in the last 50 years in the United States or 40 years, of course, they can't offshore us, and they can't, as far as we know so far, can't automate us musicians out of a job. And so the recourses of exploitive capitalists are going to be harder to levy against a collective in a much different circumstance that Ample provides.
Thanks so much. So David, and then David Turner, then Sam.
I'm gonna say a lot of great points have been made, and sort of circling around this question of scale, which was sort of thrown into the chat a few minutes ago. I guess like my sort of view on the question of scale, I think was sort of addressed like a little bit earlier, to the point that as Ample continues to grow, hopefully as it continues to grow, it will be able to bring in people that will be wanting it to continue to grow and continue to have it grow at a healthy rate. But I guess like one of the things that, broadly speaking, since I heard about Ample, I don't know, it's been like a couple years ago, was just that it always seemed to me like a project and sort of a business that didn't need to be huge. It didn't need to have like, it didn't need to serve every kind of genre and all kinds of artists. It could actually build and be able to serve the community that builds and forms around it. And that's like something I find really, really interesting, because so much of music online ends up putting everything into a single pot and making it so like, okay, black metal, like Europe, like trance and like folk all have to work in the same, under the same like conditions, and that just doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Never really made a ton of sense to me. So that's like something that I find really interesting about Ample, to seeing like how it grows and what direction it actually ends up shaping, and then to like the community's role, like what our role ends up being in shaping that. I guess personally, I don't particularly care what kind of music or what kind of direction folks go. I'm just more interested to see this sort of idea be able to build and grow and have this as an option or of a pool of options for other artists.
Sam, you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I think, as David mentioned, so many great points have been made already. And I think one thing for me in particular that drew me to Ampled is just this notion of community and what it means to be in a community of people who, as a community member who doesn't play, who just loves music, who finds passion in this expression that I don't personally do. And so I think as a community member and as like a community board, one thing that we want to keep in mind is just making sure that we are thinking about this in some ways from the fans' perspective and this sharing aspect. And so making it easier for the users of Ample to connect with one another, connect with their artists, to like see what other people are listening to, create spaces on the platform so that community members can be sharing and communicating. And like Ample already does like an amazing job of that, and just continuing to, from a community members aspect, just focus on that. And then with regard to the question about scale, Jessica dropped it in the chat. I think that is one of the nice things about the cooperative model is it can actually scale. This one person, one vote is designed to like allow like Ample to scale and continue to get input from the entire community and the members. And so yeah, those are just my 2 cents.
Awesome. Has anyone not get a chance to respond? Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks so much. I guess I'll just react specifically to the part about scaling. I've been a part of watching a company scale very dramatically, you know, over the course of a 5 or 6 year period, but do so in a way that was tied to, you know, governance structures that were sort of inherently misaligned with the community in some ways. And so I think that what I love about Ampled is that the governance structure allows for a better alignment as Ampled scales. I don't think that means it's going to be easy though. I think the big challenge here, you know, maybe to be slightly academic for a second, is that like there are not great examples of true democratic organizations you know, operating at like very large scales. If you think about you know, going back to sort of the original Greek democracy, it sort of depended on the ability to get everybody in one place at one time. And I think that what Ampled has the opportunity to do is to use the tools of the internet to have better ways to do true democracy. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about, because I haven't seen organizations really do that successfully before, find ways to use voting mechanisms, like what we're doing right here, to be able to scale true one person, one vote democratic systems to a large scale that allows for both the operation of the organization and the alignment between the individual community members and the ongoing mission. And so I think that Ample's governance structure is set up in a way that allows for that to happen. And a big part of the goal of the board probably needs to be helping to actually navigate the tactical decisions that allow us to implement ways to bring that into reality as the membership grows.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think we're just trying to be cognizant of the time. We're coming up on 7:30, just to make sure if anyone's got anything else they want to say or any questions they want to ask. Sorry, my wife is doing stuff behind me, so I'm not trying to be distracting. Yeah, so if we got anything you want to ask or any parting words or thoughts, now you can just speak up.
Well, I guess the one thing I've been thinking about as everyone is talking is that we're trying to, in this one question, we're talking a lot about the company and where it can grow and what that means. And that's very, very important. But there's also one thing that's in the back of my mind that we haven't talked about. So it's just, I guess, my parting thought to let you know that I am thinking about it, is why is an artist going to join Ampled? And why is their fan going to join Ampled to support that artist, right? These are very big questions. Like a question like, how does Ampled become successful? Like, that's a big question for us to talk about in the future. But for an artist, how does that artist successful on Ampled is unique. Every artist is going to answer it differently. Sometimes it may be as practical as, well, I need to pay my rent and I would love to raise enough money to do that. Sometimes it means I really want to build a community to share my artwork with and I want to get the feedback. Each artist that uses a platform is going to have a different reason of why they're there and what success means to them. Just as each community member and each fan is going to have a different reason to join Ample. And I think as we think of these big questions of what does it mean to take Ampled out of beta and what does it mean to get this platform successful and growing and healthy, I think we should always, always, always think about what are the artists needing, wanting, and hoping to achieve, and what are those fans and community members joining it needing, wanting, and hoping to achieve. So I know that if I give a musician $1, that's going to help ensure that they can make more music, and that as a fan makes me happy. But as someone who understands platforms like this, I also know that it means in a time of a pandemic, their lights are on, and their team members and managers and roadies, their lights are on. Because quite frankly, to be honest with all of you, my lights are on because of crowdfunding to an artist, of patronage. And so as we move ahead and think about how do we make this awesome co-op successful, let's also just think about what the artists are going to need to be successful, because our success is very much dependent upon their success. And each person is going to have a different definition for that.
That's awesome. Agreed, 100%. Does anyone else have any things they want to add or any questions that might come up?
I'd just like to say this has been a very inspiring meetup of sorts between all these different ideas and people, and whoever does get selected on the community aspect of the board, I would really hope that everyone continue to pour in their ideas and what they think is going on, because there's so much being shared that needs more time to be thought out and implemented. So for me as an artist, I resonate with everything that everyone's been saying from, the side of the field that I don't deal with that often, because it's things that come up in our realm, so to speak, that we talk about, like I said, in back rooms at clubs, and we complain about and all that stuff. So it's really, really nice to see that other people outside of, all not on the stage are thinking about making us successful. And something that Sam brought up that I thought maybe it could be a guiding principle for us going forward is the thing that I've noticed works is, you're right, this is about watching an artist grow. if that can be kind of like our thing, like it's a space, yes, it's for some people, it's for making money. Like for me, there's no gigs. I live in New York City. March 19th, the city closed. It was donezo. It was cold, blah, blah, blah. We have summer. You playing these rinky-dink gigs for like barely any money. There's no tours, the whole thing. You know how it is. And Spotify's giving people like pennies, you know, fractions of a penny for album sales. So this was a way to do that, but also kind of develop a super fan. You know, this is one thing we're realizing is Ampled is not for your casual, you know, fan who just goes to your Instagram and clicks like without looking at your content. Ampled is for somebody who wants a little bit more of you as an artist, who wants to see your process, who wants to see like something they don't get to, you know, the development. That resonated with me very much. So, Sam, like just watching, like when you said that, I was like, dang, that's the shit that's actually working on my Ampled is the artist development. Keep, you know, put that in my back pocket. But I'm excited to work with everyone and collaborate. I think, oh, there's a cat. Oh, that's Latte. He's a little bit mean. Say hey, Latte. He's looking at me like, motherfucker, where's my food? Fuck all this Ampled shit. I got a co-op for you. Co-op this bowl. But you know, it's for me. I just really want, like I said earlier, I want to see this thing be successful, not just for myself, but for the scene, the industry, for other industries. Like obviously, we're going to this direction as artists. You know, I mean, as a society. So. Yeah, kudos to Colin and Austin and all the people who've been behind the scenes making this thing work. And yeah, like I said, I look forward to really, really making this a successful endeavor.
Perfect place to end, I think.
Well said.
Yeah, I'm just totally blown away. I'm like really inspired by everyone today. Yeah, it's awesome. I think there's so much to work with, I think, in moving this all forward together. And it's just really awesome to hear the passion for participation, because I think that's what's in the end what's going to make it successful. So yeah, really happy again. There will be a follow-up from us with some of the actual voting mechanisms and stuff. We want to make sure we include this video for people that weren't here. So I would probably say expect something tomorrow morning. Yeah, be patient with us. We're iterating and figuring it out as we go. Yeah, I don't know. Anything you want to add, Colin?
No, I mean, this has just been awesome. I mean, hearing it from everyone has been tremendous. And I'm just honored that anyone wants to, you know, be involved, considering that, you know, where this came from and just simple conversations. But also like, wouldn't this be cool if, and to see all these people here. So yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful and just in honor that you guys are even interested. So I'm very happy about that. All right. Well, if you, again, our emails and our Slacks and our everything is always open. So we don't want to stop hearing from anyone. So, you know, obviously if you've got some questions or thoughts or anything else, I mean, we want to hear it. That's how this thing works stronger together. So let us know, and, you know, we'll always lend you an ear.
That's a good, we should include an invite to Slack when we send out the next email.
Agreed.
So we'll do that and make sure everyone is in there that wants to be in there.
And Pet Slack, apparently. Yeah, we need to do that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
So long.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.